I have 70 years and beyond worth of stories to tell. I was born in 1950 in Greensboro, North Carolina. Today, the world is changing so fast. Everything is moving so quickly. I want to hang on to my stories. I want to share my stories of yesterday. I want to talk about my life today. And I want to share history the way I remember it. Welcome to 70 Years and Beyond. Greetings, everybody. Wambui Bahati here. You know, yesterday I thought it was July 14th. Anytime I had to reference the date, I would say July 14th. Anytime someone asked me or I needed to use the date for any reason, I would say July 14th. And guess what? It wasn't July 14th. Yesterday was July 15th. Now, some of you may be saying, so no big deal. I get the dates mixed up all the time. Well, with my history and being the age that I am, when things like that happen, there's a question that pops up in my head, and that question is, is this how it starts? I want to share a story with you. This is a story about my mother. My mother was an excellent cook. Me and my siblings thought she was the best cook in all of Greensboro, North Carolina. In fact, when we grew up and we would go back to visit my mother, it wasn't always just because we wanted to see her. We wanted her food, good food, soul food, food so good you could think about it and taste how wonderful it was. My mother was an excellent cook. And then, one day, the cooking changed. Food that had been superb and succulent was now undercooked, overcooked, sometimes raw, sometimes with ingredients that we couldn't identify. The food was awful, and she didn't understand why we didn't want to eat it. That was the first clue that something wasn't right. Then came the driving issues. My mother was an excellent driver. I don't think my mother was ever pulled over for anything. Not only was her driving great, she kept her insurance and her tax, her registration. She kept everything up to date, and she was always on top of everything. In fact, my mother was what they call a defensive driver. She was one of those drivers that was so good that even if you decided to do something ridiculous, my mother would know what to do so that you, with your ridiculousness, couldn't destroy her, yourself, or anyone else. And then we started getting the calls from gas stations, parking lots, with my mother saying, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to get back home. Or she'd say, I don't remember how to turn the parking lights on or the headlights on. Or it'd be raining and she would call and say, can somebody tell me how to turn these windshield wipers on? Well, that's when we knew that my mother could no longer live on her own. So the first thing we tried is bringing in caregivers into the home. So we went through about 3 of those, and each one my mother would just throw out and tell not to come back anymore. My mother, even when she was well, she just never liked strangers in her house. Now, she didn't feel that she needed a babysitter or somebody in her house watching over her, so she would tell them in no uncertain terms, get out of my house and you're not welcome back, and she would lock the door and not let them back in. And so one of us would get a call from the caregiver saying, look, I'm no longer at your mother's house. She threw me out and locked the door. She told me not to ever come back to her house again. And you know what? I am not ever going back again. So then we turned to nursing homes. There was a nursing home that was near where my 2 brothers lived in North Carolina. And it was close enough that they could go by in the evenings and check on her. Well, one day, my sister, who lived in New York, made a surprise visit to the nursing home early in the morning. She did not like what she saw. She took my mother out of that home right on the spot that day. Now, because my sister was from New York and she had to get my mother back to North Carolina, and she knew that my mother was not someone that would be a good candidate for flying, she was going to take a train from North Carolina to New York, which is not a bad ride. I've taken that ride. So the next morning, because there are only 2 trains that leave from Greensboro to New York a day, there are only 2. So the next morning, she went to the train station to come back to New York with my mother. Only one problem. My mother didn't have her ID. The ID that they wanted was at my sister's house in New York. So they wouldn't let my mother on the train. I mean, no amounts of, well, I'm her daughter, I'm taking care of her, she's very ill. That didn't work. She was not getting on that train without a proper ID. So my sister called me back up in New York and said, hey, go to my house and get Mom's ID. We need it so that she can get on the train. She said, I can't stay at this hotel another night. We need to get out of here. The train is leaving in the morning at 10 o'clock. The train leaves. I need that ID here in Greensboro in my hand way before 10 o'clock in the morning. And so I say, okay, I go get the ID and I go to where else? FedEx. And I say, hey, FedEx, I got to get this to North Carolina as soon as possible. And they say, well, we can overnight it. It'll get there tomorrow morning. We can promise you by 10:30. 10:30, but the train leaves at 10. So I told my sister what they had said. I said, 10:30. She said, no, the train is leaving at 10. I need that license tonight or early in the morning. So I said, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. She said, make it happen. So then I started walking through the blocks, trying to see, after I left the FedEx office, trying to see if I had missed something. Even going to places like Staples and all these little office places, trying to see if they had a hookup where you could get something someplace in a few hours. And there was no place that could do that. But my sister had told me to make it happen. I was scared to call her back. So I'm on the street now. By now it's like about 4 or 5 in the afternoon. I'm thinking, oh God, I don't know how to make this work. And I see a guy delivering something, and he has on the red and yellow uniform. Like, I had never dealt with DHL before. I'd heard of them, but they were just never part of my world. But I went over to that guy and I told him what my situation was, and he says, oh, we can do that. And I'm like, really? And so he gave me a number, and I went home and called the number, and the guy said, yeah, we can do that. It's going to cost you $300. So I called my sister back. I said, they can get it there, but it's going to cost $300. So she gave me her card, and she said, tell them to get the driver's license here as fast as they can. And so I called them back and I said, well, we want to send the license. We got to get the license there. And so here's what happened. I didn't know this was a thing, but I called and told them I wanted to do it. So they sent somebody to my apartment, picked up the license. That person went straight to the airport, caught the next plane to Greensboro, North Carolina, and walked that license, handed it to my sister before 9 o'clock that night. Duh. So they went and got the train, and she brought my mother back to New York. Now I give my sister props, because my sister at that time was in the throes of her career. She was running an office, she had clients, she had deadlines, and she was just very busy. But she also became the major caregiver for my mother. Now, when she was at work, she did hire people to come in, and I at that time was doing a lot of speaking engagements on the road. So I was not really around a lot. I helped when I could, but I wasn't really around a lot. So she hired these people to come in to help my mother. My mother was more agreeable to that, because I believe it was the understanding that it wasn't her house these people were coming into. It was her daughter's house. So she was a little bit better with that. So the people would come in, but we went through about 3, if not 4 of these people, because they just weren't caring people. We finally got a young lady who really took good care of my mother, but she was a nosy son of a gun. If we were missing, if my sister was missing something in her house and she didn't know where it was, this girl could tell her exactly where it was, even though it was in a room or a part of the house or a space where this girl had no business being. But she could tell you what was in every little spot, every drawer, every nook, every cranny in the house. And I guess in things like situations like this, you just have to trade off. So that was the trade-off. She was the nosy one, the snoopy one. She never seemed like she took anything, but she was just all up in it. But she also seemed the best person for my mother. Well, when my mother came, she was, like I said, pretty happy. And then she became agitated, which turned into anxiety, which turned into frustration, which turned into anger. All of these, I call them phases. And then she got to the phase of anger. And then violence. She was just violent. She was just wanting to lash out. She was, became a very angry, bitter, and violent person. And then she became docile again. And the saddest part was that she didn't remember who any of us were. She didn't know who I was. It was when I was with her, I had to always reintroduce myself to her. And that's a really strange feeling, introducing yourself to the person who brought you into the life, who gave you life, but now I'm introducing myself to them. It was a slow, hard, long, and painful process. My mother slipped away little by little, and eventually my mother was taken from us due to complications from the Alzheimer's. I have never talked about too much or told the story of my mental health journey. I was in the mental health system for the most part from the time I was, let's say, 19 up until the age of about 44 or 45. I was in and out of the system, and I was told when I was in my 40s that I was probably never going to leave, that I would always be in and out of some facility like that. But the reason why I bring that up today, and I am going to tell that story, it's going to take a separate video. It may take 2 separate videos, but the reason why I bring it up today is because I remember on many occasions when they were trying to determine whether I should be admitted to a facility or not, or if I was in a facility, they would ask these 2 questions to determine whether or not I should be discharged. And in between, it was these 2 questions that could sometimes determine whether or not or how much my medication would be adjusted. And those 2 questions were, number 1, what date it is. Do you know what date it is? Do you know who the President of the United States is? So those were the 2 questions that they would ask me that would determine my fate based on how I answered them. So yes, when I can't find my cell phone, when I misplace something, when I can't remember a name, and mostly when I can't remember a date, oh my goodness, yes, it hits me hard, I think, because of my experiences. So when I can't remember a date, like yesterday, when I kept getting it wrong and I realized that, yes, that question came into my head, is this how it starts? I remember my mother when she was younger, way before she developed Alzheimer's. She was a note taker, and she had note cards. She had lots of little notebooks. She had a calendar. All of these things she kept notes on. In her purse, she always had a collection of pencils and pens and little notebooks. Any information someone wanted to give her or that she wanted or directions or whatever, she would just write down. She just had notes everywhere. But you know what? My mother never missed a birthday. She never missed an anniversary. She never missed an important event. She never missed or got the time wrong. She was taking care of all of her 4 kids, herself, her husband, and she knew when to have you there. She knew when to come and get you. She just had it all from note taking. She never had one of these. She never had one of these. Now, I find these very handy. You know what? I need a note to remind me sometimes to look at the phone, because if I had looked at it yesterday, really looked at it, I would have known what date it was. So maybe I need a reminder to look at the phone, because sometimes when I'm out and about and someone wants to give me information, I too, just like my mother will say, oh, let me find a pencil. Oh, and sometimes I'll say, oh, well, I can't write it right now because I don't have a pen. And the person will actually say, well, don't you have a phone? And I'm like, oh, yeah, phone. I sometimes forget that we live in this modern age with this technology. And I revert back, just like my mother. I want to take notes and write it on paper. Now, I try to keep my mind sharp. I try to keep my brain active. And one of the ways, or some of the ways that I do that, is by doing what I'm doing right now. I have 2 channels. I have a crafting channel, and I have this channel, and I have an Etsy shop. And so those make me have to learn. If I want to keep up, I've got to keep on top of it. So it keeps my mind going. I keep learning. It keeps my brain active. I have to learn how to use the camera. I have to learn how to use the microphone. I have to follow the guidelines that YouTube gives me. So it keeps my brain pretty much going and keeps my brain active. Another thing that I do is in the morning, I read the Bible. And I read the Bible, and then I give myself little quizzes. Like I'll say, okay, what are the first 5 books in the Bible? And I try to name them off. What are the first 5 books in the New Testament? Or I try to memorize every day a new Bible verse. And then I go back to the old Bible verses to see if I can still remember them. And that's one of the ways that I also help to keep my mind sharp. One of the reasons that I like using the Bible to help stimulate my brain, keep my mind active, is when I'm reading the Bible and I'm memorizing verses in the Bible, it is also something that comforts me. And where I may get a little anxious or even worried sometimes if I can't remember something and I hear that voice and that question, is this how it starts? Well, when I'm reading the Word and the things that I'm memorizing from the Bible, like I said, gives me comfort and lets me know that I am not on this journey alone. What are some of the things that you do to keep your mind active? Or what are some tips that you have for remembering things? Share them in the comments. We'd all love to know, and we can help out each other. Until next time, stay well. I send you much love. 70 years and beyond. Wambui Bahati.